Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are cracking open what is, well, essentially a manifesto for a major digital movement, Victory with Ash.
It really is.
We've been handed this significant stack of source material, and it's tensely structured. It outlines 13 foundational arguments for why member registration is not just a polite request.
Oh, not at all.
It's an absolute strategic, non-negotiable necessity for what they're calling their most transformative training.
That's right. And when you look at these sources, you realize pretty quickly, we're not just analyzing a standard software sign-up process.
No.
Victory with Ash frames this single step as the prerequisite for participating in what they call the rebirth of the internet.
That's a huge claim.
A huge claim.
Yeah.
And also ushering in a new digital dawn. So our mission today is really to unpack these 13 pillars, to get beyond the surface level stuff.
Right.
We need to understand the deep and sometimes, paradoxical logic behind them. We need to see why the proponents view this registration not as bureaucracy, but as a definitive commitment to destiny.
A commitment to destiny. And that core claim is what makes this so compelling, I think. Registration is the non-negotiable gateway.
The only way in.
The only way into an entire ecosystem that pledges to replace exploitation with ethical technology and confusion with clarity. That line, automation meets dignity.
That's the one.
It's powerful. So we're essentially mapping out the rhetorical, the logistical, and the technical foundation of what they intend to be a global digital revolution.
Let's do it.
Let's unpack this. So we have to begin at the philosophical bedrock. I think we should combine the claims in arguments 1 and 13 here, what they call the visionary step.
That makes sense. They really bookend the whole argument.
They do. The source material just wastes no time. It states that registering is, and I'm quoting here, stepping into the new era of the internet.
And they immediately define that new era with a massive promise.
It's a big one. Automation meets dignity.
And ethical technology replaces exploitation. That's the central piece of rhetoric they're using to appeal to, the modern digital consumer.
Someone who's maybe a little tired of the current system.
Exactly. Someone who's disillusioned with the current tech models that just prioritize data harvesting over any kind of user respect.
So when they say automation meets dignity, what's the hook?
The hook is that they're promising efficiency without the compromise of your privacy or your self-worth. It's an ideological stance from the get-go.
Okay.
So when the source talks about becoming a dignified member, they're implying that the system's value is based not just on the software, but on the quality and the integrity of the people who are using it.
That choice of language, dignified member, seems so critical. It feels like it's automatically filtering the kind of user they want. What does that term specifically require from someone, beyond just clicking I agree on a form?
It requires an assumed philosophical alignment. That's the key. The source explicitly contrasts their members with others.
Oh, so?
They say you are choosing to belong to a community of builders, not followers. That elevates the member status instantly.
Right, you're not passive anymore.
You're not passive. You are choosing empowerment over confusion and clarity over chaos. Registration, therefore, isn't just a passive action. It becomes an active alignment with the system's core philosophy.
And for their target audience, the tech-savvy crowd, that's a direct rejection of the status quo.
It is. It's a rejection of being a passive consumer of algorithmic content. They are explicitly asking you to be an architect in this new world.
I noticed the language gets, almost messianic when it talks about the eventual outcome. The source is so insistent that the foundation has to be firm before the system comes with thunder.
Yes.
This connection to the grand victory suggests there's a necessary sequence here.
Yeah.
You have to make the philosophical commitment first before you get the operational power.
That's where argument 13 comes in. It serves as this urgent closing statement, and it's just demanding preparation. If the promise is a powerful, transformative rollout, the thunder, they first have to ensure the ecosystem is robust enough to handle that scale and impact.
You can't just unleash it.
You can't. You cannot introduce revolutionary technology safely into a chaotic environment of, unknown participants. The firm foundation is the organized, verified, and aligned membership roster that they create through registration.
It's a classic strategy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Use this powerful, emotive language to justify what is, at its core, a pretty restrictive organizational requirement.
It is. The message is crystal clear. The future is coming. It's coming fast and with force. And if you aren't already aligned and counted, you're going to be caught unprepared when that storm hits.
Okay, but let's introduce some tension here. They promise dignity and empowerment, yet they mandate registration as this non-negotiable step to achieve what they call systemic order. That's pillar number 2. Doesn't mandatory order, often clash with ideas of digital freedom and individual dignity?
That is the core paradox in the entire manifesto. It really is. And the proponents of VictoryWithAsh, they address this head on.
How?
They reframe order. It's not a restriction, it's a benefit that's necessary for equitable distribution.
So order equals fairness.
In their system, yes. Point 2 is emphatic about this. VictoryWithAsh is a system, and they argue that every successful system requires order before you can have acceleration. They use these very relatable analogies.
Like what?
Organizing the classroom before the teaching starts, verifying the structures before the rewards flow. It suggests that without this order, any rewards would be diluted or delayed or, even stolen.
Logistically, if this thing is global and they're really preparing for millions of participants, what does this systemic order practically entail? If we move beyond the analogies, what are the technical functions that require this kind of pre-verification?
Well, for a system of this proposed scale, the requirement for order translates into some really deep operational compliance. The source outlines 5 core requirements that registration has to fulfill to make this order happen.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, a clear identity of all participants. And this goes way beyond just a name. It links to a digital identity architecture, maybe even involving verifiable credentials to confirm not just who you are, but what permissions you hold.
So that implies a serious internal vetting mechanism. This is far beyond a simple email verification link.
Oh, absolutely. Second, accurate communication channels. In a global system that's handling sensitive training and potential financial benefits, they cannot risk emails bouncing or, crucial updates getting lost in spam folders. They need redundant, verified contact information.
Makes sense.
Third is transparent record keeping. This is critical for accountability. If the system is promising rewards, it needs an undeniable ledger of who did what, when, and where. Registration is what kicks off that ledger.
And I'm guessing the last 2 relate directly to resource distribution and access to other proprietary tools.
Precisely. The fourth is secure access to tools. If they're launching cutting-edge AI or secure communication platforms, access has to be tightly controlled. You have to prevent misuse or, commercial exploitation by non-members. Registration is what creates the necessary access tokens and credentialing.
Okay, and number 5.
And fifth, proper allocation of training resources. We have to remember this is a global system. So resource allocation isn't just digital goods. It's potentially localization, server bandwidth allocation based on regional density, translation services. If the system doesn't know who you are and where you are, it just can't effectively deliver customized benefits or modules. That leads to systemic inefficiency.
So registration gets defined as the essential doorway, and it's there to make sure that no early supporter gets left behind. It's an organizational imperative, but it's packaged as a critical guarantee of inclusion for the early adopters.
That's the rhetorical genius of it. By establishing mandatory order, they promise protection for those early adopters. They mitigate the risks of internal confusion, which, historically, that's the failure point of so many large-scale decentralized movements.
Right.
By demanding this compliance upfront, they guarantee a smoother, faster acceleration, which is the very thing this technically minded community craves.
That really does set the technical and logistical foundation. So let's move to the moral foundation, which is pillar number 3, dignity before data.
Yes.
The source materials state very clearly that the system does not just accept anyone. It only welcomes those who are ready to align with integrity and responsibility. This focus on selectivity, especially when you have global ambitions, is really intriguing.
The emphasis here is all on quality control. It's the inverse of a typical social media platform that just wants infinite growth at any cost.
Right, growth over everything.
Exactly. The principle of dignity before data establishes this high ethical bar. It suggests that the system will actually sacrifice sheer member volume if that volume compromises the integrity of the community. They are looking for participants who will be net contributors to the ethical framework, not just mere consumers.
But if they're only welcoming those who are aligned with integrity and responsibility, what are the implicit filters here? Is the act of registration itself the only test, or does registering imply consent to some kind of future audit or a behavioral standard?
Based on the source material, the act of registration functions as the initial public declaration of commitment. It's the first step in a behavioral standard.
Okay.
They outline 3 distinct ways this act strengthens that moral foundation. First, registration is a commitment to using the system responsibly. It's essentially a formal pledge.
That sounds like
Second, by registering, The member becomes a visible representative, an ambassador of the movement's positive spirit. And that exerts social pressure for good behavior.
So it moves the responsibility from the system itself onto the individual member.
Precisely. And third, collectively, this mass act of registration strengthens the community's overall moral and ethical foundation. The implication is that a verified, accountable community is inherently more powerful, more unified, and more focused than an anonymous one.
So it creates a feedback loop.
A self-reinforcing ethical loop, yes. This alignment ensures the upcoming training itself will be more effective because the student body already shares a common ethical language. If the students don't compromise on integrity, the training they receive about ethical technology can be far more advanced and focused.
So the quality of the incoming student body directly dictates the depth of the education they can receive. That's fascinating. It really attempts to leverage organizational strength from member integrity. And that, I think, concludes our look at the foundational and philosophical alignment pieces, which really set the stage for the practical, highly secure requirements of the training itself. All right, let's shift our attention to section 2, and we'll start with pillar number 4, protecting the ecosystem. In the current, let's face it, chaotic digital environment, the source material places a paramount importance on security.
It's the make or break element. It has to be.
They contrasted so sharply with previous insecure digital environments.
Well, think about it. If VictoryWithAsh truly intends to introduce automated systems and ethical high-value digital assets, they become an immediate target for bad actors.
Immediately.
If the system fails because of infiltration or exploitation, the entire promise of ethical technology and dignity just collapses. So registration is positioned not just as a defensive measure, but as the core security filter. It's what verifies who is in the fortress.
The sources get very specific here. They detail 5 specific security benefits that flow exclusively from registering these dignified members. Let's go into depth on those. How does registration bolster verifiable